Current affairs show, Let's Talk. I'm your host Hamid Chad with my co-host Akil Halil.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam. Salaam. Let's Talk is brought to you by Salaam Radio on 16.2 FM, and for our Luton listeners, Assalamu alaikum, is brought to you by Inspire FM. You can listen to us online as always at salamradio.co.uk or watch the show live on our streaming services. Search for Salaam Radio on Facebook, YouTube and or Twitter. If you prefer mobile, please download and use our Salaam Radio app from the App Store or Google Play. Salaam Radio is always on air, 24/7, 365, uniting all communities. This week we'll be talking about, is China the new slave master as it shackles, handcuffs and whips its way through the building the new Silk Road in its own image? And the second half of the show we will be talking about charity begins from home, the Conservative attempt at washing their hands off their monstrous legacy. You can get involved, and please do pick up the phone and get involved. You can call us on 01733 602133, that's 01733 602133, or text and WhatsApp us on 07745 278 978. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
You alright?
Very well, thank you. Well, actually, I say that, I've got a bit of a sore throat, so
it's coming through, it's coming through.
It is, yeah, forgive me, I am trying to keep it...
You're struggling to breathe there, brother.
I'll be fine, inshallah. I've got you here, haven't I? Yeah.
You mean I get an opportunity to say something this time?
Hey, I'm sure if you rewind... Brother Muzaffar will back me up.
Yeah, well, he'll always back you up, you know.
I tell you what, though, see, as you mentioned,
if it's daylight outside and you say it's nighttime, he'll back you up.
No
you
way.
do realise that?
No way. But what I will say is, once again, I want to shout out to Brother Ahmed. He's not here, but the seat is warm. I'm sure he's listening to us. But
it's been warm for a while.
It's been warm for a while, but I'm starting to.
Seat's got heating or something,
well,
right?
I'm telling you, it's a heated seat, and I'm hoping.
That's saying nothing about Bro Ahmed.
He's gonna come back at some point. I'm hoping this at least once this year.
Inshallah.
Has he been with us once this year? Has he? I can't recall it.
I don't think so. No. He's got his own drive time show.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I'm Brother Ahmed, if you're listening, we're starting to take it a little bit personally now that you're not here. Christmas is coming.
Maybe if you're not on the show, might just see him back.
Oh, I didn't think of that.
Anyway, great to be back this week.
Alhamdulillah.
It was a good show last week. I think this week we're all raring to go.
Yes, we've got some very pertinent issues to talk about.
Great topics.
Although we have to, it should be said that there were other issues that we could have quite easily picked up, but we felt certainly the second topic, which is a UK-based one, but this one, the first one, I think is it's bubbling away in the background, isn't it?
Yeah, you're right. Actually, this week there were quite a lot of topics. There was interesting topics, really interesting one.
Especially what's happening in the States at the moment. With Judge Kavanaugh. And so on and so forth.
I can't believe they haven't dropped him yet. But hey,
that's that. And also about what's going on with the Russians and the spies and all this. So there's a lot of international things going on. But the economy is important for the world.
Yeah.
And we know about China and its Silk Road. But what we're going to discuss this evening, hopefully, inshallah, is looking at it from a different perspective.
Yeah. Well, we know China. If you just take Africa, for example, because Silk Roads is a historical network of roads. It's not just one road. It's a network of roads that crisscrosses across Africa, Middle East, Asia, right up to Europe.
That's right.
And whoever controls the Silk Road, historically, that has always been the case, controls the economy of the world. That has been a historical fact.
And just for the benefit of our listeners, as much as it may conjure up an image of caravans, deserts, or adventurers like Marco Polo, we're talking about the initiative by the President Xi Jinping and his Belt and Road Initiative here, aren't we?
That's right. That's absolutely. There's a modern day reawakening of the Silk Roads, I suppose. Which is called Belt and Road Initiative. Where China's committed trillions.
Yeah, that's right. I mean,
dollars
and its aim is to revive and extend networks, essentially new railways, new ports, new pipelines, new power grids and highways. For essentially what Xi Jinping is saying is for economic integration.
Yeah.
And spurring development.
Yeah.
Although other nations, especially in the West, are saying this is their way of actively, asserting the superpower.
Yeah.
Which is interesting when you look into this. So when you start looking into what we're going to be talking this evening, it's really interesting.
I mean, the West. First of all, West will say that because it's a receding superpower. But nonetheless, let's look at the claim. President Xi Jinping, he a while back, I think a couple of decades ago, he said that they are going to make China a world leader in 3 key areas: 1, innovation; 2, influence; and 3, military power. And one of its main kind of bedrock or major area of influence or control is Africa. Africa is absolutely central to its needs to fulfill its expansion. It's because what Africa has and China doesn't have is huge deposits of natural resources.
Yeah.
Oil, gas,
minerals,
copper, minerals, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of things that go into our iPhones and things like that, all from Africa.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. All that stuff comes from Africa, and people who mine this stuff work in the worst conditions possible and get paid minimum, less than $1 a day.
And I mean, everybody's seen things like that film Blood Diamond, for example.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
where you have these people who, like you said, they are working in really harsh, inhumane conditions to mine a mineral that they have no idea the value of. Yeah, which ends up in Sloane Street in London or Golders Green, and it's chopped up and sold for millions of pounds.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, Blood Diamond was somewhat different in that sense, but nonetheless, yeah, same sort of thing. I mean, I heard this Howard account once about this. This Sierra Leone where you pick up a stone, and it's a diamond underneath, right? And this mother was saying, because what's happening there, and it continues to happen, is that people are just being killed on the street, and then this kind of civil unrest, and children are dying and stuff. And what she was saying is that we would rather just give all these resources away just to have a momentary peace. And that's telling. That's telling. But in case of Africa and in case of China, so like I said, what Africa has is natural resources, but what Africa doesn't have and what China has is abundance is capital, is the ability to spend on major infrastructure programs. So Africa can be pulled out of poverty. So these villages and towns can be connected together through railroad and super high link railroads, and build dams for electricity and all sorts of things, roads and whatever you. So their economy can grow and it can be stimulated. So far. In the last 2 decades, almost not quite 2 decades, China has handed over $125 billion to African nations, African countries, which is a huge sum of money. And I guess the question is, what are they getting for that money? Because many of these countries are not going to be able to pay back the billions, tens of billions of dollars they have received in loans, not in aid, or because China is not claiming to be a charity. It's not like other countries that hand over, they will hand over 10 billion. 1 billion might be for some aid purpose, and the other 9 billion will be for a loan of some nature. Whereas China is blatantly saying, look, this is not a loan. I'm sorry, this is not a charitable aid. This is a loan. We expect a return on capital, knowing full well that many of these countries are not going to be able to give them a return on that investment. So most other countries, or other people would not invest or would not lend money to these countries, but yet China is. And I think that's the crux of the question. Why is China going out of its way, handing over? I mean, only this year. In this conference, actually, so China's in the last 3 years has handed over 60 billion. This year, it's committed another 60 billion to African nations, knowing full well that countries like Zambia and others, in the Congo, are most likely not going to be able to pay these loans back. So what happens in that instance? And this is why I think many people are believing that China is using its debt trap diplomacy, is what they're calling it. So it's giving away money to countries, entrapping them with that money, and then imposing a certain political advantage that it wants to have.
And that's the skeptical, I think, version of it. I mean, look, the numbers don't lie. In June 2017, McKinsey and company reported an estimated 10,000 Chinese-owned firms operating in Africa. When you say it like that, you're like, okay, that's a lot of people, but Africa's a huge continent, you know. But I keep going back to Xi Jinping's Silk Road when people bring up these areas. Like, well, okay, well, you know, like you said, they're investing in these countries, and these are loans. Okay, he has this vision, and what he essentially wants to happen is the world to trade with China seamlessly. Now, none of these countries need to go into business with China. They don't have to sign up to these deals.
That's true.
But you often find some of these leaders in these countries, if they don't take on this initiative, they will lose their electorate. So you have like a catch-22 situation where you're in power and you want to remain in power, but you need to appease the masses by saying, I mean, look, one of the things that before all these Panama Papers and things like that happened from Nawaz Sharif, for a very long time, if you spoke to somebody who followed Pakistani politics or somebody who was from there, they would say to you, oh, it doesn't matter what he's done, he's built roads.
That's right.
Okay,
that's right.
And it's a similar thing here in Africa. You know, some of these leaders, some of these presidents can say, well, hold on a minute. Well, yeah, I understand that, you know, something's happened here, and we need to look into that. However, don't forget, we've got a port, and we're going to be able to ship, and so on and so forth. So it's a catch-22 for the incumbent.
I think you're right. I think nobody needs to take that deal.
Yeah.
But the problem is that they, so take the example of Zambia.
Yeah.
Now this is a country that has probably one of the few countries that has a kind of working democracy with an opposition.
Yeah.
With an opposition, and when the opposition was set to win or forecasted to win, and because the opposition is very critical of China and its flexing of influence within its country, in taking over or attempting to take over its national power grid and other infrastructure, because don't forget, China knows that a lot of this money won't be paid back, so they are tying it to commodities. They're tying it to natural resources of the country. So if you can't pay back, that's fine. We'll take over one of your mines, or we'll take over your electricity services, or whatever.
Which seems fair.
No, because these are natural resources. These are national resources.
Yeah, but hold on. But to the point where they can release the debt. Okay, to that, let me give you an example, right? The route, the trade route, right? It goes through at least 76 countries, with typical plans including a new deep sea port in Myanmar. Power lines in Maldives, and a dam in Pakistan. Okay, partner nations are weighing the benefits against the concerns like me and you were discussing. Now, for example, look at Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka eased part of its huge debt to China by handing majority ownership of a newly developed port to a Chinese state-owned company.
So but what was that saying to you?
I'm saying to you, they know what they're getting into.
No, what's that saying to you? That's saying to you that in the modern world, where we're not living like 100 years ago or 150 years ago, where countries could just get onto a boat, go across the Atlantic and take over a country and kill its masses. Yeah. We don't live in that.
No, we don't. No. Well, we do to a degree.
But what we can do is what's happening here in Sri Lanka, as an example. Yeah. Sri Lanka, as a sovereign nation, has literally handed over part of its territory to China because they can't service the debt anymore. Yeah. So China now has access to that port.
Yes, but hold on. What about if you flip
which is that area of land?
Okay, then flip that then. You have Greece, for example, when you had the whole debt crisis for Greece, and it couldn't pay any money. It kept going back to the IMF and the European Central Bank saying, well, you need to do this, you need to do this.
Yeah, but it's part of EU.
Yeah, I know, I get that, but the principle's got to be very similar, which is, look, if you don't do this, we're going to do this. Do they stay in a constant state of debt? Do they constantly keep going down so the masses lose out on the quality of life, or do they give up a little bit of what they signed up to a deal? You can't tell me the Chinese didn't say to them, if this didn't work out, we're not going to keep this. Now, hold your thoughts.
No, I'm sure it was. These contracts are written very obscure. Yeah, and to be fair, China doesn't have the best of corruption, policies in place, anti-corruption policies in place. So it's not. I mean, it does take a wild imagination to think that money exchanged hands in some way through some ministers, etc. And then these policies or this contract, which probably ran hundreds of pages, was signed and passed. And only to later find out, oh my God, we owe the port actually because we can't service the debt. Now, the reason I want to bring this back to the idea of enslavement is because this is exactly what happened in when Britain went to the subcontinent.
So in India.
In India, subcontinent, yeah,
yeah.
Because it took over through the East India Company. It was a company, it was a trading company, a commercial initiative, and when it did well, and there was a lot of issues around it as well. The British government took over because it had invested into the corporation. And through that process, it ended up having its own standing army within areas that before you know it, the whole country is taken over by a foreign government. So I'm not against China. I don't know. I mean, the West has done worse things than China it has done so far. But if you look at history, very often history does repeat itself.
Yes, very often.
History is a great signpost to where potentially things would go. Now, President Xi Jinping may have the best of intentions, although the current record doesn't show because there's no real opposition. Anyone opposing his idea or his policies finds themselves into real trouble. But the point is that Sri Lanka is an example. Zambia is an example.
Oh, let me counter these examples.
Well,
let me counter these examples, right? Okay, so the China's ambitions have become election issues for countries like Pakistan and Indonesia. Okay, a newly elected Malaysian government went so far as to put Chinese projects worth $22 billion on hold in 2018 because of a concern about loan conditions and the use of Chinese labour that limits benefits to the local economy. So there are countries who are waking up to this. Yeah. And it's refreshing to see people who are reading the blueprint, brother.
10 years ago, Peter Hitchin wrote an article, I can't remember which paper it is now, in which he talked about how China has created a new slave empire in Africa. And what he was talking about is, currently what was happening is that when China wants to build a massive infrastructure project in a country, it doesn't readily look to use the local resources, which is what you would expect to do, build up the local talent, you give jobs to local people, and there is this kind of economy building. It wants to ship its own people, certainly at sort of anything above a labourer, and even labourers, they want to ship them out of China into this region. So and they live in colonies, they live separate, which is really harkens back to how the British lived in India, in the subcontinent, and they treat the locals as if they're nothing. And this is and Peter Hitchens he cites many examples of where this is happening, where the Chinese who are working there, they have no concept of safety records, safety within the mines and whatever. All they are is profit, and they treat the locals like dirt. The locals aren't getting any well off because they're not really getting any more jobs, and so this is so in a sense I don't necessarily think China's ambitions are about expansion, and it's and every day or every year that goes by we see a greater extent of that, but
and just to add to that, you are right. I mean, the initiative has now gone from China to South America, the Caribbean, even the Arctic now. It is really, its tentacles are around the world now.
Yeah, I mean, China's playing a very long game, and this is what the US did. This is how US built itself, the Marshall Plan. You know, this is how US built itself as well. You know, it's playing a long game. It knows that it's pulled itself out of poverty through debt-driven initiatives, debt-driven infrastructure projects. Yeah, so take the debt, can't service it, but at least you get a road or you get a highway. You get, you get new airport. You get, a lot of venti projects. Yeah. I mean, interesting. Somebody was saying that there are many white elephant projects even before the word get go. And Gwadar port in Pakistan, which most people think is a very successful project. And this person he was a political analyst on Al Jazeera, and he was saying actually it's a white elephant project. It's a great vanity project. The economic gain from it may not outweigh the loan that Pakistan has taken from China, and Pakistan has become at the center of this now as the US tries to reassert itself, although in many cases the US is trying to lessen its influence around the world. But
certainly with Donald Trump in charge,
with Donald Trump. But it's certainly in Pakistan, in that kind of geographical geolocation strategic region, China's moving in, and the US is trying to exert itself or exert influence over it, and Pakistan is becoming the pawn in between.
It is, and it's a delicate, sensitive situation Pakistan finds itself in, certainly in a strategic military sense. What I will say, just to add to that as well, is that there is speculation with what you just said there, with all these countries defaulting, whether it's a port or whatever it may be, that there's the so-called string of pearls theory.
Well, it's not a theory, it's a reality in that.
Although Xi, he contends that the project doesn't involve, and I quote, outdated geopolitical maneuvering. It's just about stimulating a growth. And I suppose in many ways, time will tell.
I mean, string of pearls is about having ports all across these countries along those coasts. So once you have that, and in Sri Lanka we've seen that you can't service your debt, they'll take over that port. Once China starts to take over and dominate those ports, and those then it has a greater influence in the seas around those ports. Before it has a greater influence around the world in terms of military capacity, just like the US has. US has had its greatest influence because of its military.
This is true. I mean, look at Qatar, an absolutely tiny country. It's got a purpose-built, multi-billion-dollar base there for, I can't remember how many, I think it's triple-digit thousand American military personnel. I mean, that's influence. When
Djibouti is the same. I mean, it's a country that nobody really heard of or was in conflict until until the Middle East became extremely important in the last couple of decades, and a port's been built there, a military base. So it's used for military base, not for just America, but for many other countries in Europe and elsewhere, and it's become a strategically important location now.
I mean, and also in many ways you could say that about Pakistan when the war on terror started by George W. Bush, and in order to gain access to Afghanistan, Pakistan became a strategic point. And like you said, I agree with you. It is the long term, but however, I'm siding with the other side here, brother. I don't think it's anything as malicious as it's been made out to be.
Time will tell, but we do know that as China moves to spend $125 billion, according to McKinsey projections, the Chinese companies that are currently in there, because that's what they do, they end up getting huge amounts of companies in there in these countries because it's easy buck to make. Just like, I mean, it's very much what Western powers did when it conquered and took over these countries. McKinsey projects that these countries in the next within the next decade, less than 7 years or so, they will projected to make $440 billion out of these countries. So the profits are huge to be made.
They are massive.
Profits.
They are massive.
So you know, I mean, and this again is, you know, the leaders are eating cake with Xi Jinping and other industrialists, Chinese industrialists. Do the crumbs fall to the bottom? Are the people, a billion African people, going to benefit from? Haven't done so when Western powers were giving them loans and having influence. It's unlikely they will do so as the Chinese move in and take over.
That I definitely agree with you, which is an unfortunate factor, isn't it? It's a reality. Unfortunately, Africa is the forgotten continent. Throughout the development of the Western world. It's just been forgotten.
Yeah,
allowing China to step in.
Yeah,
and now it's like, oh, hold on a minute, what are you doing?
Well, China provides the alternative to the Western kind of political maneuverings.
Yeah.
But I think people will find, as they found as Persians, or which is Iran now, found that when American rise happened, that actually when they welcomed Americans because the British were so bad, that the Americans equally or worse. Jazakallah khair, listening brothers and sisters. And we're just going to go to a break, and inshallah we'll see you back in a few minutes. Assalamu alaikum.
You're listening to Salaam Radio, and it's now time for Isha Azan. This Azan is sponsored by UK Islamic Mission, serving humanity since 1962.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allah. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما صليت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم وبارك على محمد وعلى آل محمد كما باركت على إبراهيم وعلى آل إبراهيم في العالمين إنك حميد مجيد. اللهم رب هذه الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمدا الوسيلة والفضيلة وابعثه مقاما محمودا الذي وعدته. اللهم آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. اللهم بك نحيا وبك نموت وإليك المصير. رضينا بالله ربا وبالإسلام دينا وبمحمد صلى الله عليه وسلم نبيا ورسولا.
This Azan is sponsored by UK Islamic Mission, serving humanity since 1962.
This is Salaam Radio, Peterborough's Muslim community radio. Broadcasting on 106.2 FM and online.
Assalamu alaikum, brothers and sisters. Welcome back to Let's Talk. I'm your host, Hamid Chadud. My co-host, Akil Halia.
Assalamu alaikum.
So in the first half of the show, we were talking about how China potentially is becoming the new quote-unquote slave master as it shackles, handcuffs and whips its way through building the new Silk Road in its own image. And I think we had an interesting conversation about
Yes,
that.
it was good. Yeah.
Interestingly, somebody has commented what's wrong with the deal if it helps their economy and pulls people out of, I suppose, a kind of economic out of misery.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think we're arguing with necessarily that there's anything wrong with that, but the terms of that agreement have to be looked at, because very often a lot of these projects don't deliver, and then the country becomes further in debt, and before you know it,
You sound like Trump against China. It's the terms of the deal.
It's the terms of every deal, right? It's the
Read
terms
the
of every
blueprint,
deal.
brother.
Yeah. So that's an interesting one. But I don't think we need to go into. I think we had a conversation in our first
That's
part.
right.
We need to move on.
I just
to
want to
the
remind our
next,
listeners of the numbers, yeah?
Sure, yeah.
So you can call the studio on 01733 602 133, or you can text WhatsApp the show on 07745 278 978. Please get involved. I'm sure there's people who've got lots of opinions what we're going to discuss next, and
Inshallah.
what we've already discussed, inshallah.
Yeah, inshallah. Okay, so the next topic, I suppose, is an interesting one. Charity begins at home. How the Conservative, or is the Conservative attempting to wash their hands of their monstrous legacy? Now, I guess this talking piece comes off the back of the Conservative conference in Birmingham that's happened, where a Peterborough councillor, Shazia Bashir, who I think neither of us know.
No, we don't. No. And I think it's important from the offset, we must declare that we have no vested interest in any political party.
That's right, yeah. We're not members of any political party.
No, we're not, no.
But it's interesting what she... Anyway, so she has been catapulted into the limelight, good on her. And she's given us a talk, not very long, maybe 10 minutes or so, at a Conservative Party conference. And her talk's has gone viral.
It has certainly gone viral.
And that was an interesting point that she made, and I think that was kind of the crux of her talk, really.
Yes, it was, and I found it difficult to find the original version because it's gone viral so much.
I couldn't find it myself.
Yeah.
Oh, you tried looking for it as well?
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't find it myself. But it's interesting that, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to try and try and have a look and see what.
Add our tuppence.
What does it mean by empty jugs and charity begins from home or at home? But anyway, to put it out there, we did invite Shazia Bashir on the show. She declined to come on the show, whether she was busy or not. But she did put in a comment that I feel at the moment with all that is happening, I will remain quiet as I have clarified my point. However, I won't rule out interview in the near future, but I truly appreciate your help and support.
Which is great.
Thank you very much. But if you are listening,
yes,
Shazia Bashir, if you are listening, please do pick up the phone. We'd love to have a clarification from you as to what you meant by that. And if we say anything that you agree or disagree with, please pick up the phone, and that goes for everyone, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, for us, I suppose the video essentially, the clip that we've seen, and I suppose the element of the video that's gone viral is she's saying that she's watched the Labour conference. Yeah. And most of the crowd is essentially waving Palestinian flags. And then she stated that Labour is supporting the Palestinians because charity begins at home, which, it's difficult to fathom because that's not the purpose of what was happening there. They were showing solidarity with the Palestinian people, their struggle with what's actually happening there on the ground. And not, this wasn't, I just can't match the two together.
I got sent the clip, and I couldn't understand some people waving a flag, and I'm sure in the Conservative Party conference, you know, there are many people waving many flags. I'm sure the Friends of Israel, there are many people waving the Israeli flag. I don't understand, you know, you get people waving a flag. How does that mean anything in terms of, she talks about charity begins from home? I don't know how the two correlate. You know?
Especially when you look at the track record of the Tories and what's happened since they've been in power. You know, there's been austerity right across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
and we are talking about the UK is one of the richest one of the richest countries in the world, and one of the most thriving economies.
Fifth largest economy in the world.
Fifth largest economy in the world, right? And we have International Development Secretary. One of I don't know if it's a he or she now, and it used to be Priti Patel's job. But as you know, she decided to go.
She's like moonlight, didn't she?
How ironically, it was with Israel. Behind Theresa May's back.
So she was sacked.
She was sacked. But one of its purpose is to essentially influence other countries and or provide aid for whatever reason it may be to people who are suffering around the world. Okay, which is great.
Yeah.
And in their the 2017, I've got this here in front of me, 2018 International Development Priorities for the UK. You have, you know, leaving no one behind, championing trade with developing countries, so on and so on and so on. And it goes to number 8, which is responding to humanitarian emergencies. Well, Palestine is a humanitarian emergency. But in their manifesto, in their document that you can find online, they talk about Yemen and how it's one of the poorest countries in the Middle East, and it ranks 168th out of 188 in human development around the world. So,
but that doesn't stop us selling arms to Saudi to bomb the Yemenis,
to the said people.
Yeah,
that's right.
I mean, DEFID is the mechanism through which this charity gets delivered at an international level. Very often it's more to do with, and we were talking about that in the earlier show, to do with influencing or having political maneuverings around the country or those countries, those areas. But actually, what's interesting is here. You know, Shazib Shir, now she's listening, she can come on the show and clarify this. She talks about charity begins. Does she mean it ends there as well? Is that what she's saying? She's saying that, you know, in the context of what she's saying and the way she's saying it, is she saying that it ends at that point? You know, people using this term very often, you know, when they talk about giving aid overseas to Africa or places where people are actually dying of hunger and starvation, you know, they use the term, but charity begins at home, as if it ends at that point as well.
Well, it simply doesn't work like that, does it?
No, but do you think in her saying that, that's what she is actually implying?
I hope not. I didn't get that vibe. If you want me to be honest with you, I didn't get that vibe from her.
Yeah, and when she says home, is she talking about the Conservative home? Because, you know, Conservative Party has, and many people have called out the massive Islamophobia within the Conservative Party,
which is
and she said that she is a Conservative because she's a Muslim. I believe she's a Muslim, and she said I'm a Conservative. So does she find that there is a conflict between the two? Because home and charity and the Conservatives kind of, I don't know how you kind of square that peg.
Yeah, I mean, look at Saida Wasi's constantly online and all the time, almost saying what we're just saying here. I mean, she's constantly taking, you know, really high-ranking members of the Conservative Party, and she's saying to them, like, what are you doing about this? Yeah, it's Islamophobia in your own party.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Pastor didn't able to have something. That's
exactly her famous, infamous words. Now, do I think? No, I don't think she meant that. You know, it's just Conservatives and UK thing. I hope not. I really do, but I find it very troubling that you can put the two things together: the Palestinian flag being waved, and then at the same time having, you know, attacking Jeremy Corbyn, which is fine because that's a Conservative conference. Talking about Palestine and talking about charity, it just doesn't go together. Especially when you realise America, which has such a vested interest in Israel, has cut off hundreds of millions of dollars of aid only last month to the Palestinians. Right? You have the Israeli government itself, you know, blocking and in fact monitoring all the aid that comes to its ports, before it allows any of it to go into into the Palestinian territories. I mean, we're talking about people who have nothing to actually live for. They live in the world's largest open prison.
Yeah, according to David Cameron, who was
according to David Cameron,
yeah, the world's largest open prison.
Not just on a on a religious level as well as on a human level. It's a deeply troubling statement.
I mean, it's interesting that she put out a statement later. Because she got a lot of backlash for this, because the idea that our kind of recognition of the Palestinian struggle is of a solidarity, not of a charity, because the difference being that charity is more inward, where the charity's taking control and influencing the outcome, where solidarity is more about people who are in the struggle having defining the outcome, and people are kind of signing up to help that struggle, but her sort of taking that and saying it's a charity almost kind of belittles it, considering
it devalues it immediately.
That it is a conservative issue, because it was Arthur Balfour's the mandate, who was the foreign secretary for the Conservative Party, previously having been the Prime Minister, which led to the Palestinian issue as it is today. Where with the creation of Israel on an area of land that they didn't own.
No,
they had a mandate for it to manage it, but not to hand it over to a third party, which is what they ended up doing, quite illegally, mind you.
And on a daily basis, land is being annexed illegally. Illegal settlements are being put on this land. It is an emotive issue for me and you, and for a lot of our listeners.
We've discussed it many times.
We've discussed it many times. So yeah, it's really troubling.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely. So, but she has later on put out a statement saying that she was misunderstood. That's not what she said.
Okay.
And she said something along the lines of, "I'm a Muslim," although I don't understand how being a Muslim and fighting solidarity with Palestinians, how that kind of correlates, because we're finding solidarity with Palestinian people on a human level. Yeah, it's irrespective of their religion, because don't forget, Palestinians aren't all Muslims.
Yeah, correct.
There are Muslims, there are Christians, there are secular, there are atheists. There are all sorts of
and just
people.
to add to that, the video in which the Labour followers are and supporters are waving their flags, nearly all of them didn't like Muslims at all. Yeah. It's a humans reacted to a human situation.
Exactly.
So we stand with your struggle. You look
just like we stood with the South Africans, in against the apartheid.
That's right.
We didn't turn around and say, well, actually, you know what, they're Christians or whatever.
That's right.
No.
Nelson Mandela was called a terrorist.
Absolutely, and there was oppression happening. There was wrong happening. And it was every one of our duty not to think, oh my God, I don't have any butter to put on my bread, so oh God, charity begins at home. But it was, look, if they are dying literally from food starvation, hunger, a lack of clean water, whatever, I need to find solidarity with them, I need to kind of find out ways to help them, rather than kind of look inwardly in a protectionist kind of manner.
I mean, what kind of a world do we live in if we can't help other people?
Yeah, I mean, Hugh Mackay, who is an author of a book called Good Life, he said a good life is a life lived for others.
Yeah.
And other people's happiness should be put ahead of our own happiness, and that's a good life. And interestingly, he says that this whole idea of charity begins in the home, actually not, or begins at home, as opposed to from home, is actually misunderstood, because the original meaning of charity begins in the home is that you teach your children how to be charitable. That's what it means. It means that charity is taught in the house. The virtue is cultured in the house. And there's a great article by Melinda Cousins who talks about this, and she talks about how the idea of charity begins at home is all about culturing charitable feelings and being a human being in that sense within a good wholesome home. So when you do see issues and conditions, because charity was never considered as money, giving money to charity, it was always considered as showing love and affection and understanding and recognizing and kind of empathizing with other people's struggles and the problem they're having. So that is about charity at home. And actually she says that Thomas Brown in his book Religio Medici in 1640 used the term, and actually that was the first time this term was used, and he used it to argue against those people who said, let's not help other people because charity, within some idea of charity, begins at home. So it's really the whole idea of this term was always about not being internal looking, but looking outwards, looking towards other people and reaching out across the divide and reaching out to help and facilitate people. So her attempt at trying to kind of use this term, completely wrongly, mind you, to somehow say that the Palestinian struggle or our kind of solidarity with them, or Jeremy Corbyn's solidarity, or the Labour members' solidarity, or anyone's solidarity with them is somehow wrong because we have people who are hungry on the streets in Britain. The two don't need to go. It doesn't. There doesn't need to be a conflict between the two.
There doesn't. And just to add to that, I mean, I know we spoke about this before as well, but you had Band-Aid in 1984. Okay, Bob Geldof, right? Yeah. They raised money for anti-famine in Ethiopia, and so on and so forth. If they didn't do that, millions and millions of people would have died. Even more people would have died from a disaster. We are fortunate that we live in this country, and we are able to, more than just do an act of kindness, we have brothers. I mean, for example, we have a local charity here in Peterborough, which will go around the world. They're helping people regardless of race. It doesn't matter. In fact, they're helping people, in the UK when there's floods. Let alone outside of this country.
Absolutely.
Well, the purpose here is that I think it was definitely an ill-informed, misjudged speech. Now the question is, was it written for her?
I see what you're saying. What you're saying is that because it was because Conservative Party has been accused of Islamophobia, therefore, great, somebody's come along, she wears hijab, kind of tokenism type thing. She thought she's getting something out of it to get this national press coverage, and it's great, go on the show, go on the platform, but you must read out X, Y, and Z. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying. I'm posing
a
question.
I'm posing the question. Was it written for? I don't know Shazia Bashir. I've never met her. I've rarely even heard of her, actually, quite honestly, prior to this. So I'm not sure how she speaks or what her kind of general conversations are, or what kind of speeches she has given, to be able to understand whether this was something quite out to kilter with what she would normally say. I'm not sure. It'd be interesting if somebody else does know her better to kind of call in.
You can call the studio on 01733 602 133. Text WhatsApp the show 07745 278 978. I have to go back to the beginning. We have had Tory austerity for a long time.
The empty jug.
We know we do food bank. We know that the empty jug does exist. But the empty jug, one of the reasons it exists is because of the tight purse strings by the incumbent government, which happens to be Conservative.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, food banks, the massive uptake of food banks happened under the Conservative government.
And which they were in denial. Absolutely in denial. We have seen people who come in and it is a humbling experience, and we live in this country, and even those people would not turn their backs on other suffering around the world. I mean, we've had the Indonesian tsunami over the last week. Have we got a caller?
I think we have.
We got a caller. Oh, that's if Brother Hamid. You can find where I think you need to change the screen just there.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Assalamu alaikum, brother. You're live on air with Let's Talk.
Imtiaz Ali.
Imtiaz, how are you?
Walaikum salam. I'm really good. I'm really enjoying your show. It's a
Jazakallah
very good topic that you guys are covering, and I'm so glad that you're covering it this week.
Jazakallah. Do you have a comment?
Yeah, I do. So I really like some of the discussion you've had. I think you've made some interesting points. I think one thing that you guys have probably missed out on, or you're going to cover later on, was this is the first time Shazia Bashir's actually had a platform to speak, and this is the first time she has an opportunity where she could say something that's heard at a national level. But she's chosen this opportunity to try and further her own political gain at the expense of the innocent Palestinians. So a lot of people, I think, voted for Shazia because they looked at her and she was a Muslim, she's a Pakistani, she's a local girl, and they felt they had shared values. So you kind of give that person the benefit of the doubt, and you vote them if you don't really know their policies. You vote them because you think, you know, apni kuri hai, we know her family, whatever. But this is the first time she's actually had a platform, and she's sold out all of her voters. She's sold out all of the Muslims that might have supported her. She's sold out the Palestinians who, bless them, have, you know, hardly any support, you know, in the international community. And she's used the very first opportunity when she's had a platform to completely discredit that. And I know what she's saying, and I've seen her written apology, so-called apology. It's all politics, and it's all, you know, wordy, and.
I mean, she is saying that she's misunderstood, and she does feel for the Palestinian people, but she doesn't want this issue to be politicized.
I think, but before we get to that bit, just to say as well, brother, for on our side, obviously we have no personal history. I mean, I think you got a little advantage there in terms of knowing a little bit more about her. So we've gone solely on what we've seen.
I know Shazia. Yeah, I know Shazia. Definitely, I've known her for a number of years. But yeah, so but I'll tell you one thing. So a lot of people have said stuff like, I mean, if you speak to her supporters, some of them are diehard and they're like, oh, it's politics, it's politics. No, it's not politics. This is not politics. I'm sorry. But if it was Labour, Tory, Green, UKIP, whatever, if you're speaking against Palestinians, then you're no friend of mine.
Yeah,
and that doesn't matter what political party you are.
Yeah, listen, I totally get. I mean, we simply can't fathom how the two correlate. They simply don't.
And the other thing, I mean, there's one other thing that she said. I won't take too much of your time. I just want to make one more point. The other thing she said was she was attacking Labour for trying to get the vote by waving Palestinian flags. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but don't political parties adopt policies to be popular with the electorate? Isn't that the definition of politics?
Yeah, I mean, let's look at the £350 million a week we're going to get back for the bus. That never happened, bro.
Exactly. Why are you saying that? Are you just trying to get the vote? Are you trying to get the vote?
Exactly.
So, her saying that and to be in politics, for her to say that is incredibly naive. So, as a listener, as an independent listener, I promise you I'm an independent listener. People might say you've got affiliations with political parties or whatever. This is not political party related. If this was Labour, Tory, whatever it was, this was wrong. As an independent, I think Shazia Bashir should do the only honourable thing that she has left to do, and that is to issue a Facebook video apology and promise to resign. She needs to resign. That's
okay, well,
strong words.
Jazakallah khair for your comments.
Jazakallah. And so anybody else there listening, you know, you can call the studio as well. Great call. Thank you very much for that, brother. 01733 602 133. You know, very, very interesting opinion.
I mean, she's already issued a Facebook apology, right? I mean, or about kind of. I mean,
well,
the article I read.
Just for the benefit of our listeners, me and Brother Hamid are not on Facebook, so we'd have to get that confirmed.
Yeah, well, I read an article that quoted her Facebook.
Oh, I see.
Apology, right? Yeah. But yeah, no, Imtiaz, I think he was absolutely right in having her. I mean, I don't know, maybe more formally state the apology.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, one of the points that he raised there was that if this was the first time you had a chance to speak nationally, to attempt to bring the Palestinians into an argument which you've essentially got against Labour, just doesn't weigh up. I mean, I totally understand where he's coming from.
Yeah, I mean, what's interesting is that when you have war crimes being attributed to the state of Israel and the kind of far right Zionist government there, you have not only the Shazia Bashir, who by proxy supported Israel in this. But you have Sajid Javid who stood up at the same conference and to the conservative Friends of Israel and said that I once went on a trip, I believe it was, to Israel, and since then I've supported and I always will support the state of Israel, irrespective what they do to the local people in the country and outside.
That's disgusting.
I mean, it's absolutely
that's
absurd,
disgusting.
isn't it? So, I mean, it just goes to show that how the Conservative Party is so out of kilter.
Well, not just that. I mean, in her speech, I'm glad you said that. It's so out of kilter that in her speech she said the Conservative Party is the party where a son of a Pakistani driver, somebody who came from Pakistan, can become Home Secretary. Well, now the Conservative Party is the party where the rules are going to change, where no one can come from Pakistan and do that again.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, she talks about it went on and on and on. I mean, I listened to Maybot go through her. I mean, you've seen the video where she's tried to dance as well. I just found I found them to be disjointed and all out of ideas. And this really, really, you know, this was this really was for us anyway in Peterborough something that really was something that needed to be spoken about tonight.
Yeah, Jazaka Hara. I think, interesting. I think, well. Yeah, let's see what happens on Facebook then.
Yeah, in fact, I've just had a brother just send me it, inshallah.
Okay. Well, we've got 30 seconds to go, so just before we go, Jazakallah for listening, brothers and sisters. Just finally, just want to talk about an appeal. As you know what's happening in Indonesia, there's an emergency appeal. UK, I'm live in the Indonesia emergency appeal. Tomorrow, 6th of October, this is tomorrow at 5 p.m. on Salaam Radio. So please do tune in and donate as much as you can. Well, again, Jazakallah for listening, and inshallah, see you next week. Assalamu alaikum.
Stay tuned to Salaam Radio after this short ad break.
It does not take much to bring some